Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of the Prison Math podcast. Today, I'm joined by Daira from the Electric Coin Company, which is a new. Well, I suppose the Electric Coin Company isn't extremely new, but it's a new partnership that the Prison Math Project is having, so that we'll be able to take donations in the form of cryptocurrency as well. So, hi, how's it going?
Hi, yeah, I'm doing great.
So before we get into things, just because we might have some new viewers, I want to just sort of very quickly introduce the Prison Math Project, and then perhaps we can talk more in detail about it afterwards. So for those of you who aren't familiar, the Prison Math Project is an organization that was started by an inmate, Christopher Havens, who's actually still incarcerated and still basically running things, where the idea of the program is that we reach out to people who are incarcerated and who are looking to better their lives, make changes and improvements while they're there, in particular through learning mathematics. And so what we do is we find these people and we pair them up with mathematical pen pals. And we sort of have this, then foster a relationship, which of course is centered initially around mathematics, but it's the general philosophy, and what we found to be the case is that it's enriching in a more general sense, these relationships. And so we're currently in the process. We've only been able to reach out to people incarcerated in the United States currently. But we're making moves to extend out to Canada as well. And these plans to expand it does take some money to run the organization, which is why we do ask for donations. And if anyone happens to be watching this that is involved in the Canadian justice system, we need help getting the Prison Math Project advertised to Canada. So please don't hesitate to reach out in the comments. But the main point of today's discussion is to talk about our new partnership with the Electric Coin Company. So, Daira, would you mind just telling us a little bit about ECC and your role in it?
Yes, so ECC is a company that was set up to develop the ZCash cryptocurrency. It's a private cryptocurrency, so unlike Bitcoin, for example, where all of the transactions are visible on the ledger, in ZCash, you have the ability to do shielded transactions, which hide the sender, the recipient, and the amount. So I'm a cryptographer for ZCash and a protocol designer, and along with Sean Bowe, Jack Grigg, a few other people, we developed this protocol. We deployed it in 2016, and since then we've been working on improving it. It's developed from an academic paper, a protocol called ZeroCash.
Oh, okay. And is this, I've heard this term white paper thrown around as a sort of, I think it means like proof of concept. Would this be an example of a white paper that sort of launched it, or?
Well, it was an academic paper, actually. The term white paper, it tends to be specific to a given cryptocurrency, and we don't really have a white paper in that sense. We have a protocol spec.
I see.
I'm the lead author on the protocol spec.
So you work as a cryptographer for ECC. So tell me a little bit about how that came about. Like what has been your relationship with cryptography? Were you like into computers since you were really young, or how did that?
I was, yeah. I got a ZX81 when I was, I think, that would have been Christmas 1982. But yeah, I've been involved with computers all my life. I got into cryptography through politics, really. there were a lot of attempts by governments to restrict cryptography in the 90s, 2000s. And I didn't think it should be restricted. I think privacy is a human right. And so that's how I got involved. And then sort of drifted towards the math side of it rather than politics. I'm still an anarchist because the math is absolutely fascinating.
I certainly agree. So I suppose I haven't introduced myself to you, or perhaps other people who are tuning in for the first time. So I'm a first-year PhD student at the University of Calgary in mathematics. My specific field is more it involves something called the Langlands program, which is very representation theory and geometry. But of course, even though that's what I do in the day-to-day, it's like the why anyone does this is basically in service of number theory in some sense.
I guess the intersection between our areas would be elliptic curves.
Yes, certainly, yeah. So my day-to-day work, I don't do a ton of stuff with elliptic curves, but that certainly fits into all this stuff. And during my undergrad, I was I took a course that was, I think it was called applied algebra, but it was essentially a course in like basic number theory, basic cryptography. So things like RSA and the Shamir secrets sharing and different I already forget the name of I can think of the theorems that you use to carry out the protocols, but I've already forgotten the name.
Diffie-Hellman, maybe?
Sorry?
Diffie-Hellman?
Diffie-Hellman. Yes.
we use Diffie-Hellman a lot. Basically, all of modern cryptography is based on Diffie-Hellman.
Right, and is it it's the case even that the if I'm not mistaken, like the standard elliptic curve cryptography is basically just a version of Diffie-Hellman, but adapted for the elliptic curves, right?
Yeah, so Diffie-Hellman, just in case people aren't familiar, is a key exchange protocol. So the idea is that each of us have a private key and a public key. So you give me your public key, I give you my public key. And now using our private keys, we can agree some secret that is shared only between us. There's a little bit more complication because that ignores authentication, but that's basically it.
Right, and there's also, I was talking with someone, an acquaintance. Actually, I don't quite remember how we met, but it's interesting that you can meet strangers online these days and form relationships with people with a common interest on the other side of the world. So there's actually someone I interviewed on my own personal YouTube channel where they're working on post-quantum elliptic curve cryptography. Though I don't know as much about this and this setup.
I've been involved in that as well, actually. I was one of the co-designers of the Sphinx hash-based post-quantum signature algorithm. So, yeah.
Very cool.
That was a version of that was submitted to the NIST competition for post-quantum cryptography.
Oh, is that there's like a yearly like competition / convention? Is that what?
There is a series of workshops on post-quantum cryptography. I think that might be what you're thinking of.
So then in your journey to cryptography, so you had some facility with computers from a young age, but has this been academic at all, or like are you mostly self-taught or totally self-taught, or?
I'm basically totally self-taught. I think there was a short crypto module in my degree, which is maths and computation, but that basically didn't tell me anything except the basics of RSA. So yeah, I'm self-taught. completely. Especially in an area like zero knowledge proofs, which is what ZCash uses. At the time we started developing ZCash, zero knowledge proofs were basically, there were lots of academic papers on it, but they were just starting to become practical in an engineering sense. So we've been able to improve the efficiency of those proofs quite a bit and make them fast enough to do transactions in a cryptocurrency.
Would you actually mind just going over a brief explanation of zero knowledge proofs?
Yeah. So a proof in general is some way that I can demonstrate a fact to you. And the kind of proofs that we're talking about here are non-interactive probabilistic proofs. So that means I can give you some short piece of data that convinces you that I know some mathematical facts. So I know the private inputs to some algorithm that produces a given result. And then, so this isn't a proof that is certain in the mathematical sense, because there's a very small probability of me being able to convince you, even though I don't know that information. But that chance is small enough that it's less likely that our computers get hit by an alpha particle in the wrong place and just produce the wrong answer.
Interesting. So yeah, I guess the idea is, yeah, you just need to make sure that the odds are so astronomically low, and then you're pretty happy to call it convinced.
Yes. So that property is called soundness, or if I know the inputs, it's called knowledge soundness. And then there's this other property called zero knowledge, which means that I don't reveal any more information than is necessary to convince you that the statement is true.
I see. And so how exactly is this implemented in the cryptocurrency?
So for our existing protocol, we're using a proof system called GROT16, developed in 2016. So this is relatively new cryptography, and in fact, the next version of our protocol will be using a system called Halo2, which we developed ourselves. It was developed by Sean Bow, the Electric Coin Company. So the main difference between those two proof systems is that GROT16 requires what's called a trusted setup. So that means there's some information that has to be kept secret in order for the proof system to be sound. So in principle, if someone had that information, they could create false proofs. So what we did is we used a multi-party computation, and that means that so the parameters for this proof system were jointly generated by about 90 people. It's a little bit more complicated than that because there's two rounds of the setup. But, and if any one of those 90 people were honest and executed the protocol correctly, then this secret data would be hidden and it wouldn't be possible to create false proofs. But there will always be someone who isn't convinced by that kind of setup. They might think that the software has been backdoored, or they might think that all the computers we're using are infiltrated by the NSA or something like that. And so this new system that we're using called Halo2 doesn't require a trusted setup.
So now people can be this wouldn't be a concern of theirs then, that say the
Yeah, so
okay.
Anyone who is not convinced by the security of that trusted setup for GOT16, that potential objection has been eliminated.
Oh, cool, cool. And but I'm still sort of it's not clear to me where the zero knowledge proof is coming. So is that
Oh, okay.
like, say, to
So how we use the proof system in the protocol. Yeah. So in a cryptocurrency, the value that you're sending between people is held in tokens that we call notes. And in the case of a private cryptocurrency, what you have to do is be able to prove that you are the owner of a note without revealing which note it is. And that's the most complicated part of the protocol. There are other parts to it. So the idea is that you have a tree of that commits to all of the notes that have ever been created using something called a commitment scheme. And then what the zero knowledge proof is doing, it's proving that you are spending one of those notes without revealing which one it is. And also proving that you know the private key for a signature scheme. So that lets you spend a note without revealing which one it is. There's another aspect to the security of this, which is that you shouldn't be able to spend the same note twice. So how that works is that each note has something called a nullifier, and when you spend it, you reveal that nullifier, and then you won't be able to spend the same note again because it would have the same nullifier. So the complicated part of it is making sure that the nullifier and the note commitment are linked in a way that only the zero knowledge proof can prove that they're linked and no one else can.
Right.
And then we just use conventional Diffie-Hellman encryption to encrypt the note.
Okay. Conventional in the standard, like the number theoretic sense, or the elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman?
Oh, it's elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman, yes.
Oh, okay.
Non-interactive.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, one of my hopes is that I know that the academic grind is very difficult. The job market is extremely competitive. So one thing I have in the back of my mind is if I take off to industry instead, is to do something hopefully with elliptic curve cryptography. I think that would be where I would be happiest outside of academia.
Yeah, I really enjoy my job. I think there are relatively few jobs where you can do work on the cutting edge of mathematics or cryptography, and also be creating something that is directly useful to people. I don't mean to diss theoretical mathematicians here, but
no, I mean that's true. I do think about the fact, I absolutely love my research, but sometimes I'm like, do we really need to understand the irreducible representations of some sort of p-adic group? Maybe. I mean, sometimes discoveries are you never know when things are unlocked, right? I mean, elliptic curves, these
they used to be.
This is now essential part of modern cryptography.
But. Yeah, famously, I think who was it? Hardy said that number theory was the most perfectly useless thing. I can't remember the exact quote, but yeah, we're using things that would have been considered completely theoretical only
Mm.
about 30 years ago, I think.
Wow. Yeah. It's yeah. So I mean, who
No,
knows? Maybe
35.
maybe if I stick with this, there'll be
Yeah.
some application of these infinite dimensional representations. One can hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Elliptic curve cryptography was proposed in 1985.
In sorry, 1985.
1985.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so one of the other things I was curious about, so I know that there's a difference with cryptocurrencies between proof of work and proof of stake. And so the Zcash is currently on proof of stake, I believe.
No, it's we're on proof of work.
Or proof of work.
We're considering moving to proof of stake. So it's likely that in future we'll move to proof of stake. Obviously, a lot of details to work out. So
would you mind just breaking down some of those terms for the viewers, and then maybe saying something about why one would consider the the differences between them?
Yeah. So in general, so to make a cryptocurrency work, you need to have an agreed ordering of transactions, and everyone needs to agree what transactions have been made. And that's necessary so that you can decide if two people try to spend the same thing at the same time, you need to have some way of deciding which one actually had the money and which one spent it. So that's the purpose of a consensus protocol. And so we do this by basically running the same consensus checks on lots of computers. But there's a problem here, which is suppose that we just counted the number of computers that agreed. So we said that, say, if more than half of the computers agree on a particular order of transactions, then that's the correct order. So the problem there is that it's not hard for me to pretend to be more than half the computers in the network. So a single party could try and do that and break the system. So what you need to do is have some scarce resource that is used to decide how much of the how much computing power is held by a particular party. And then the idea is it's too expensive for an attacker to get the amount of that resource that would be needed to outweigh the rest of the network. So in a proof of work system, how that works is that each party, called a miner, tries to solve some kind of puzzle. So that could be finding a block to be added to the a block is some set of transactions to be added to the ledger, so that the hash of that block, so using a cryptographic hash function, it has some set of zeros in its hash. So there's a certain difficulty in producing a block that will satisfy that. And we use that as a measure of computing power. So that's how proof of work works. In most cryptocurrencies, especially that use proof of work, the way you solve these puzzles is you buy some specialized hardware called an ASIC. And so there's some concern that maybe someone could monopolize the supply of ASICs. Maybe sort of manufacturers of ASICs come from a certain region. Up to about sort of a year or so ago, when China banned cryptocurrency mining, most of the hash power of Bitcoin, for example, is in China. It's moved mostly to the United States, I think, now. But you could be concerned about that as a centralization risk. So the idea of proof of stake is that you use the amount of cryptocurrency that you have as your scarce resource. So there's obviously a bootstrapping problem here. You have to have some way of making sure that the cryptocurrency is sufficiently well distributed to start with, but then you can start sort of measuring the amount of sort of the ability to create a new block depends on having a certain amount of the cryptocurrency already. And then the idea is that the incentive is for people who have a lot of that cryptocurrency not to disrupt the network, because if they disrupt the network, then they're just devaluing their own holdings.
And so right now you're considering moving to proof of stake.
Yeah, I didn't mention that another big advantage of proof of stake is that it requires sort of less electricity to in proof of work. You're spending the network overall is spending a lot of electricity to solve these puzzles.
Right.
To the extent that the total power usage of Bitcoin, for example, is comparable to a reasonable sized country. I don't know exactly which country it's got up to now, but several European countries, I think.
So is there, in your opinion, do you think that that everything will eventually move towards proof of stake because of this? I mean, do you do you see other coins that are proof of stake? Do you suspect that these will somehow take over, or?
So proof of stake tends to be more common for new coins. I think there are some entrenched coins that will never move to proof of stake. I think it's unlikely that Bitcoin will ever move to proof of stake, just because the Bitcoin community doesn't want that. But I mean, given that Bitcoin is the biggest user of power among any cryptocurrency by a long way, it certainly would be valuable for them to move, but I don't think they will. Yeah, from a security point of view, I think it is possible to make a proof of stake system more secure. There is this bootstrapping problem that I mentioned, where you have to make sure that the currency is sufficiently well distributed to start. But I mean, ZCash, as a currency that started off with proof of work, so we basically almost solved that problem. And Ethereum is another example of a currency that is moving from proof of work to proof of stake.
Right. So one thing actually I should point out, so any listeners who are interested in, so sort of just take a bit of a tangent here, but I just recalled, so if there's any listeners that are interested in cryptography or have skills programming or coding, one of the things that the Prison Math Project is looking to do in the future is to help people with coding. So there's actually in some prisons, people are able to learn coding while they're there. They have, but they only have access to a computer for a limited amount of time, and it's offline. Depending on the facility. Of course, this is a difficult way to learn programming, as I'm sure you know, right?
Well,
the way you
I learned programming when there was no internet, so it's possible. But yeah, in my job now, I'm always online, literally always. I can't do my job without being online.
Right, yeah. Well, yeah, and even like just the learning process, or if there's, you know, you look, oh, does someone have a piece of code that like does this thing, or oh, I'm having trouble making this thing run, right? You can go on Stack Exchange or something like this, and you know, and communicate.
Yeah, but my job is 50% Googling.
Right. And so one of the things we'd like to do is we're starting to think about ways that we can make it easier for people to do this. So we were thinking about trying to set up some sort of system so for people who do have access to email, where they could like email out their attempt at the code, and then we could have some sort of automated system that like takes it and runs the code for them, and then they get the results. Or people even, I mean, it sounds difficult, but you know, teaching through pseudocode in letter writing. So we're thinking about doing some of these things. So if there's any listeners who want to get involved with the PMP more at the computer science level, there may be opportunities for that in the near future. So stay tuned.
Yeah, there are online sort of compilers that could probably be run locally in a way that would make that work.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of sitting down and finding one and figuring out how to automate that system, essentially. Yeah. The unfortunate thing is, of course, for prisons, they don't allow anything that can be interpreted as like a coded sort of message. So the real unfortunate thing is we can't teach cryptography, which is a shame, because what a cool and a useful skill to pick up. It's unfortunate, but for example, so I've actually been I started with the PMP around February, and I started as just a pen pal mentor, and the person who I write to, he's interested in number theory, and so we're often talking about number theory things in our letters, and it's just so unfortunate because, you know, he has enough of the tools that like I could explain all this cool cryptography stuff, right? I mean, never mind the practical purposes, right? I mean, just like Diffie-Hellman, for example, I just think it's amazing that we can use math to like have this secret sharing of keys.
It really sucks that you can't teach that.
I know. Yeah. It's a shame, but what can you do?
Tear down the system.
Well, we're I mean, we are starting to talk about and think about ways that we can actually make systemic changes to how things are done. Because right now, I mean, the PMP has been great and effective in changing people's lives, but there is this issue, the systemic issues that are happening on much larger scale, and we're starting to ask ourselves, okay, that's an seemingly insurmountable thing to change, but like, what can we start doing to make these improvements, to push for you know, a system of justice that actually focuses on things like desistance and recidivism, right? Actually healing people and giving people the resources to make that change if they've you know, if they've done something to harm someone, right? Yeah, I think in just one example of the sort of crazy things that they have in place in the last interview we did, where I was speaking with a former inmate, Ruth. One of the things is they weren't allowing her, like, for the first 30 days when you get out, she wasn't allowed to use email, or which first off is insane in the modern day world. Like, that is like people communicate online. And she had also set up her own website while she was in prison. So she gets out and she now has like less things available to her. And then the other thing too is there was these other, like, she wasn't able to work for a month.
Yeah.
Couldn't find a job.
How do you access housing or
Exactly.
benefits or
Exactly.
everything depends on it now.
Exactly. And like, let's say, for example, someone was in prison for robbery. Okay. So then if you they get out, you tell them they can't work for a month. How are they going to get money? Are you not
completely
asking them to try and to reoffend? It's it's bananas.
Yep, no argument from me.
So so with so this new partnership with ZCash, right? You're allowing is going to allow the PMP to now accept donations in terms of crypto. So has the Electric Coin Company done a lot of these sort of things, or like the sort of day-to-day business, like you're partnering with different companies from industry and or charities?
So I know some other charities do accept donations in ZCash. They've tended to be sort of tech focused charities, like the Electronic Frontier Foundation, things like that. So I'm quite excited for it to be extended to sort of social justice charities like yours.
Yeah, well, we're excited to have this option available as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I think that's just about all the questions I had for you for today. So I just want to thank you again so much for joining us and for being part of the ZCash team. And yeah, have yourself a good day.
It's great fun.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much.